Some women don't chase, and yet they're never forgotten. There's a particular kind of woman who moves through the world differently. She doesn't announce her solitude, doesn't defend it, doesn't apologize for it. She simply exists in it, like a flame that burns without needing to consume everything around it. And somehow this very quality and this mysterious self-containment becomes the thing that haunts the men who once knew her, who once took her presence for granted. What is it about the woman who lives alone, truly alone, that creates such a disturbance in the collective unconscious? Why does her independence feel like a mirror held up to society's deepest shadows? In the depths of every man's psyche lives what Carl Jung called the anima, the feminine principle that represents his capacity for feeling, intuition, and emotional depth. When a man encounters a woman who embodies genuine independence, something primal stirs within him. She becomes a projection screen for all the feminine inner thorny he has either idealized or rejected within himself. The woman who lives alone without desperate attachment has learned something that most never will. She has befriended her own shadow. She has looked into the dark corners of her psyche where the rejected parts of herself live, the parts that were told they were too much, too intense, too demanding, and instead of banishing them, she has integrated them. This integration creates a kind of wholeness that is both magnetic and terrifying to those still fragmented by their own unlived lives. She moves through coffee shops and grocery stores with an energy that speaks of secret knowledge, not the performative mystery of someone trying to be enigmatic, but the natural mystery of someone who has found peace with her own contradictions. She can enjoy a man's company without needing his validation. She can love without losing herself. This is not the result of rules or strategies. This is the fruit of deep psychological work. But here's where the story becomes complex, where the fairy tale meets the reality of human psychology. The very quality that makes her attractive, her self-sufficiency, becomes the thing that triggers the deepest wounds in others. The man who is drawn to her independence will simultaneously feel threatened by it. His ego, constructed around being needed, being the provider, being essential, suddenly feels obsolete. You see, most people form attachments based on what psychologists call anxious or avoidant patterns. They either cling desperately to connection or push it away to maintain safety. But the woman who has truly learned to live alone has developed something rarer, secure attachment to herself. She doesn't need to be rescued, and she doesn't need to rescue anyone else. This security reads as rejection to those still trapped in their own attachment wounds. The ancient Stoics understood something profound about desire and attachment. They recognized that the things we chase most desperately are often the things that flee from us. The woman who has embraced solitude has accidentally stumbled upon this wisdom. By not chasing, by not needing, by not grasping, she creates a space that others want to fill. But this is not a manipulation. This is the natural result of having faced her own emptiness and found it beautiful. Jung spoke of individuation as the process of becoming who you truly are, separate from the projections and expectations of others. The woman living alone is often in the midst of this sacred process. She's peeling away the layers of who she thought she should be to discover who she actually is. This work requires solitude, requires silence, requires the kind of deep listening that's impossible when constantly managing another person's emotional needs. Her kitchen table becomes her altar, her morning routine becomes her ritual, her evening solitude becomes her sanctuary. She's not waiting for life to begin when someone else arrives. She's living fully in the present moment, complete unto herself. And this is what disturbs the collective so deeply. A woman who doesn't need completion suggests that perhaps no one needs completion. A woman who finds joy in her own company implies that perhaps happiness isn't something that requires another person's participation. This is revolutionary thinking in a culture built on codependence and consumer romance. The shadow side of society's reaction to her independence reveals itself in the labels. She must be damaged, bitter, afraid of commitment, too picky, too career-focused, too this, too that. These projections say nothing about her and everything about the observer's own relationship to solitude and self-worth. Picture her on a Sunday morning, sunlight streaming through windows she chose, in a space arranged according to her own aesthetic sensibilities. She's reading a book that feeds her soul, drinking coffee that tastes exactly how she likes it, wearing clothes that feel good against her skin. There's no performance here, no audience to please. This is pure being, unfiltered existence. Now imagine the man who once knew her scrolling through his phone, feeling a vague dissatisfaction with his current situation. He remembers her laughter, the way she seemed so at peace with herself. He remembers how he felt both drawn to and intimidated by her contentment. Perhaps he told himself she was too independent, when what he really meant was that she made him aware of his own dependence, on validation, on being needed, on external sources of worth. The woman he's with now might be easier, might need him more, might make him feel more essential. But late at night when the house is quiet, he remembers the one who didn't need him at all. And somehow that memory burns brighter than any desperate clinging ever could. This is the paradox of authentic feminine power. It doesn't demand attention, yet it commands it. It doesn't chase love, yet it attracts it. It doesn't need completion, yet it inspires others toward their own wholeness. The woman who lives alone and loves it has stumbled upon one of the universe's greatest secrets. That wholeness is an inside job. But let's be clear about what this wholeness requires. It demands facing the parts of herself that were trained to be small, accommodating, always available. It means sitting with the discomfort of her own desires without immediately seeking someone else to fulfill them. It means learning to be her own good company, her own source of entertainment, her own emotional regulation system. The trauma psychology perspective reveals another layer. Many women who choose solitude have learned through experience that their worth isn't determined by their relationship status. They've often walked through fire, whether through heartbreak, betrayal, or simply the slow recognition that they were performing versions of themselves that weren't authentic, and emerged with a different understanding of value. They've integrated both their light and shadow, their strength and vulnerability, their independence and their capacity for intimacy. This integration creates what Jung would call a transcendent function, the ability to hold paradox without being torn apart by it. She can be alone without being lonely. She can be strong without being hard. She can be open to love without being desperate for it. And here's what happens in the deepest chambers of the psyche. When a woman stops needing external validation, when she stops performing femininity for an audience, when she stops making herself small to make others comfortable, she begins to radiate something that can't be manufactured or faked. She begins to embody her own authority. This authority isn't aggressive or demanding. It's quiet, steady, unshakable. It's the authority that comes from having survived your own company, from having faced your own demons, from having created a life that reflects your actual values rather than society's expectations. The woman who lives alone and thrives isn't running from love. She's running toward herself. She's not avoiding commitment. She's committed to her own growth, her own truth, her own unfolding. She's not afraid of intimacy. She's intimate with herself first, which makes all other intimacy more authentic, more conscious, more whole. She has learned the greatest lesson of all, that the love she was seeking everywhere else was always available within herself, that the completion she thought required another person was always accessible through her own integration, that the security she craved from external sources was always possible through her own self-relationship. The woman who walks away in silence isn't weak. She simply sees more. She sees the difference between love and need, between connection and codependence, between solitude and loneliness. And in seeing clearly, she becomes free.